Hello, I'm Olly and this is CriminOlly, where I talk about crime, pulp, horror, that kind of thing. Today, romance, humour and extreme horror. It's my weekly wrap-up. So I've had an enjoyably varied reading week this week. I've got 6 books to talk to you about today, 4 of which I've finished, 2 of which are ongoing at the moment. And 3 of those books, 3 of the ones that I finished, are horror novels, but 3 horror novels that couldn't be more different from each other. So yeah, it's been an enjoyably varied reading week. So let me get on and tell you about the books. So the first thing I finished then was this, Sweet Valley High, Kiss of a Killer by Francine Pascal and Kate William. So this was the final book in a vampire trilogy that took place in the 90s in the Sweet Valley High series. I found this a really disappointing end to the series. So I talked about the first 2 books on my wrap-up last week, and I thought they were both okay. But this one just felt like a very obvious, quite trite ending to the series. So yeah, did not particularly enjoy it, if I'm honest with you. Sweet Valley High. So the Sweet Valley High books are set in California. They're about these 2 twins, Jessica and Elizabeth, who go to Sweet Valley High, the high school. And in this series of books, this mysterious guy, Jonathan Kane, comes to the high school. He's very obviously a vampire. And there was just a complete lack of mystery in these books. So the fact that he was a vampire was kind of fun and interesting, but they didn't really do anything with that wasn't completely obvious. So yeah, a disappointing end to that series for me anyway. This was a buddy read with MJ from Reading This Life. She's put up a video talking about the trilogy. She enjoyed it a lot more than I did. Next thing I finished then was The Totem by David Morrell. So I am going to do a video review of this one and just talk generally a bit about David Morrell. I think he's a really good writer and one that sadly you don't see many people talking about. So this was a really enjoyable, creepy horror novel. Very, very tense, as all of David Morrell's books are. This one set in a small town where there's a body found at the beginning of the book by the local sheriff, and like weird stuff starts happening almost immediately. I'm not going to tell you more than that because it would spoil the book. It's one of those books where the tension kind of gradually ramps up as the book progresses. Things get darker and darker and weirder. I thought it was really, really good. Next then, I read something completely different. So this was for the series of buddy reads I'm doing with my dad. This was the first of them. It was Manalive by GK Chesterton. So I did a video which went up last week talking about that series of buddy reads. Really enjoyed this first one. So I didn't love the book, if I'm honest, but it was very interesting to read it. And my dad's told me it was the first kind of work he would consider to be literature that he read. And I think that's why it's kind of lasted with him, why it's lingered with him. So it's an interesting, fun book written, I can't remember exactly when it was written now, but in Victorian times, about this boarding house. This mysterious guy, Innocent Smith, turns up at the boarding house and events kind of spiral from there. So it was really fun. There was a nice sense of humour to it. Some of the prose was very, very funny, but it ends up being kind of quite a philosophical, kind of almost religious book. And I felt like the message kind of overwhelmed the story a little bit. So there was definitely fun to be had on the ride, if you like, as well as some very dated terminology. So, warning for that if that's something that you find difficult in older books. But yeah, overall, it didn't quite work for me as a book, although I had a lot of fun with it as I was reading it. After that, it's something, again, that couldn't be more different. So the third of the horror novels I read this week. So this was Terrifier 2 by Tim Waggoner. So Tim Waggoner's novelisation of the movie Terrifier 2. I love the fact that movies are getting novelisations again. There's been a few of them. I talked about V. Castro's novelisation of the first of the Rebel Moon books on the channel a couple of months ago. I read that and quite enjoyed that. I enjoyed this a lot more. I thought this was really, really good. So if you are a fan of the Terrifier movies, this gives you everything you want. And I know those films aren't to everyone's tastes. I personally think they're interesting. I think they're effective. I think they're an interesting kind of modern take on the slasher genre. Like very, very dark, but a lot of humour in them as well. And this book really delivers on all of those fronts. So I thought Tim Waggoner did a great job of adapting the movie, which can be difficult to do. He manages to make it interesting, even if you've seen the film, as I have. And he manages to really capture the sense of the Terrifier films, whilst also making an effective novel, which I think is difficult. When you think about those films, if you've seen them, they rely so much on visuals. So Art the Clown, the villain of the films, does not speak. But there's a lot of humour in the performance that the actor who plays Art gives. And Waggoner manages to capture that in the book, which I thought was a really impressive feat. You also get the kind of family dynamic that's in the film, and I thought that worked really, really well here. So, yeah, I thoroughly enjoyed this. Definitely recommend it if you're a fan of the films. I'm probably going to do a full review of this one. So that's the things I finished this week then. So 4 books finished. 2 books on the go at the moment. The first of those is this, Smitten by Evanovitch. And I should have said, I'm reading all of these books count in some way for TBR-a-thon, which is the event being hosted this month by Leandra from the channel Leandra the TBR Zero. So I am one of the booktubers on the booktube bingo card. I can't remember what all of these prompts, I think I'm going to try and remember which prompts they covered off. So this one was the newest book on my TBR. So this is the most recent book I've received, or was when I set my TBR for January anyway. This one was longer than the previous book that I read. The previous book that I read being the Sweet Valley High book, so that was one of the other prompts. This would also count for a Canadian author, which is another prompt because Morrell was is a Canadian. And then the Sweet Valley High book, there was a purple on the cover prompt. So that one counts for that. Love Swept, I'm trying to remember which one this was for. I think it might have been for the trash prompt. I can't quite remember. The trash prompt, of course, being my prompt on the bingo board. So anyway, this is fun so far. So Janet Evanovitch, best known for her crime fiction, but has written quite a lot, I think, of romantic fiction as well. This is kind of a light, enjoyable romance novel about a woman who's a single mum. She's divorced, and she's doing up a house. And she notices that there's like a building site nearby where there's loads of building going on, but she notices that all the builders, all the carpenters, clock off at 3:30. And that is perfect timing for her because that's when she has to do the school run to pick her kids up. So she decides to apply for a job on the building site despite having no experience of any sort of building related activity. Immediately meets like the guy, the owner of the company who's building the houses, who is very hunky, and there's already a bit of a spark between them, shall we say. So it's kind of quite humorous, quite romantic. I suspect it's going to get a little bit spicy as well. But yeah, enjoying this so far. The final thing, or the other thing that I'm reading at the moment then, I have very mixed feelings about. So it's The Crucifix Killer by Chris Carter, the first in his Robert Hunter series of books. I've read one of the later books in the series, can't remember which one, and I think it might have been called Call for the Dead or something like that, and I didn't particularly enjoy it. This one I'm enjoying a bit more, but it has all the flaws that the other book had. And the flaws of these books, in my opinion, are the writing is awful. So the prose is just terrible. And the reason I think it's bad is Chris Carter puts in so many unnecessary details. Like almost every sentence has something that you could trim out of it. If he's describing someone making a phone call, he'll talk about them getting the phone out of their pockets, dialing the number, just a couple of sentences. You just don't need for the story to progress at all. You could just say he called them. It's a frustrating book in some ways, really cheesy. It's like a serial killer thriller type thing, really cheesy, but I am kind of quite enjoying it. It's got a kind of trashiness to it that I kind of appreciate. So I'm enjoying it more than I expected to, if I'm honest. And that one counts for another square on the bingo card. And I can't remember which one it was. It might have been one of the older books on my TBR because I've had this one for ages. And then the other thing I'm reading at the moment still is submissions for the Trash Tales anthology that I'm putting together with Alex from the channel Alex on a Bridge. I think we're definitely more than halfway through reviewing the submissions. We may be getting on for 2/3 of the way through. Having a great time so far. There have been some really, really excellent stories. So again, if you're someone who submitted a story, thank you very much. Really having a good time, and hopefully before too long we'll be able to get in touch with people and let people know whether their story's been successful or not. Okay, in terms of channel stuff then, so the first thing I wanted to mention is I've started doing a new series of short videos. So I started on the 1st of January, and every day, the intention is, I've managed to do it so far, every day I do a This Day in Books video talking about something notable that happened on this day in the history of books. So it could be the birth date of an author, could be when an author passed away, could be an event, a date that is used in a book, could be the date of publication of a notable book. So far I've managed to do it and people seem to be quite enjoying it. So do look out for those. They go up at 8 o'clock UK time every morning. In terms of longer form channel stuff then, so in the last week you've had my review of the BigMe B1051C e-reader, so an e-ink device that you can read books on, you can take notes on, you can get a keyboard case for it. I think it's a really interesting device and I've enjoyed using it over the last few weeks, so you've got my review of that. You've also got my review of Witchcraft for Wayward Girls, the new book by Grady Hendrix, which comes out early next week. You've had my December wrap up, so talking about all the books I read in December, and if you had the video launching that buddy read with my dad project that I'm going to be doing all year. And then in the week ahead, you're going to have an unboxing video for another e-ink device, the Books Note Air 4C, which is another kind of 10-inch colour e-reader. So I've been using that over the last couple of days and enjoying it very much. You're going to have a video talking about Goodreads. So I did this thing where I looked back at all the books I'd read in 2024 on Goodreads, and I noticed something about a lot of them that I thought was quite interesting. So I'm going to make a video about that. You're going to have an update on the My Novel Life challenge. So I forgot to say, but the Totem was the 1979 pick for My Novel Life. So this is a challenge where I'm reading a book from every year I've been alive, starting in 1973, which is the year I was born, and working through the years. So this was 1979, so I've finished the 70s. So I'm going to do a video talking about all the books are in the 70s, not in the 70s, for the 70s, and the books I'm going to be reading for the 80s. And I think the 10 books I picked for the 80s is a really fantastic list that really kind of represents popular fiction during the 80s. So looking forward to talking to you about that. And then you'll also get probably my review of the Totem as well. So that's what's coming in the week ahead. Anyway, hope you found that interesting. Do let me know what you've been reading this week. And as always, thank you very much for watching. Hope you're safe and well out there. Hope you're reading good stuff. And I'll speak to you again very soon. Cheerio.